right, so right now is 12 p.m. on Wednesday, June the 27th, 2018. Call the Lisle Library District Finance Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please. Chris?
Lombre Wang.
Here.
Jay Fisher.
Here.
Liz Sullivan.
Here. Great, everybody's present. Let's move to agenda item 2, opportunity for visitors to speak. We have 2 visitors. Any comments? Yes, please.
May I ask a question? Or I could do it after the meeting of Dawn? I just have it can wait. Should it wait?
Well, if it's something, you want to, I mean, it doesn't matter, up to you. Whatever you feel comfortable, you can do it after or on the record. Any other visitors who would like to speak at this time? If not, let's move to item number 3. I think we need to change the approval, right? It's not approval of the minutes, it's approval of the.
No, we had a meeting.
We had
a meeting just to approve the minutes, but we need to approve the minutes of the meeting. We had to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
So I move the approval of the minutes of the December 13th, 2017 Finance Committee meeting.
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Minutes approved for December 13th, 2017. So let's move to item number 4, financial forecast as presented by Eller Investments representative. So today we have Dawn here, so the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. We've got several different handouts. The one that you were emailed is the cash flow forecast that we keep up for you using your monthly bank statements. And so the yellow indicates that it's actual numbers up through the end of April. We haven't gotten May's taken care of yet. So pretty much right on in terms of the forecast and the actual numbers. The first page is the consolidated of all of your accounts. And then
Did you hand that out today too?
it was
in your
inbox. Oh, okay, I've been printing things at home, so, okay.
Do you have
It was
I have
emailed.
extra copy, do you need extra copy?
No, thank you, I do.
I think Chris has, no, you don't anymore.
So we basically just take your bank account information to feed it into the cash flow forecast to make sure that you're, that you have the liquidity that you need to run your daily operations over and above the investment so that we can see the appropriate amount to invest. Okay, so that first page is just the consolidation of all of your accounts. The chart below shows for a 12-month period the projected and historical back through the most of the last of the year, the actual. Okay, so your low point coming in May of the year.
Are there any conclusions that stand out to you from like a chart like this?
I would say that a couple of accounts that you have remained static. They never really drop. The Illinois funds and the IMET. So you have over $1 million in the Illinois funds and over $900,000 in IMET, and those balances don't really change. So one thing I know that Ken has talked about in the past is, if you ever wanted to invest those out longer term rather than leaving them in short term, liquid funds, you could improve your return. So for example, the Illinois funds in May paid 1.75%. Now if you were to move that to a one-year CD or, ladder it out similar to what we do, 1-year CDs are paying 2.4, 2-year CDs are paying 2.8. So you could pick up, another 1%.
Yeah, I think maybe let's kind of talk through it again, because last time when Ken was here, we did try to consolidate some of the accounts.
Okay.
And so maybe we can start with the first page in terms of consolidating. I don't know if anybody have questions. My question is, of course, the yellow is actually, it's pretty straightforward. So Liz, I think in the past we kind of talked about going forward, how we can project a little bit better in terms of, our spend. But you can see traditionally the spend has been fairly consistent between 3 to 500,000 max in terms of this. Again, this is cash outflow, right? It's not necessarily saying it's the accrual basis when we talk about the accounting. So the cash forecast is really for better cash management. So if we have a good kind of capital spending plan for the fiscal year coming along, then we should be able to kind of predict a little bit better of some of the major spend we'll have, because the operating expenses like the salary and benefits and stuff are fairly straightforward. So this is just a template because again, right now it's almost end of June, it doesn't really have a lot of value taking a look at forecasts, but I'm just thinking if this is the format good that going forward we can have Eller to help us to do it on a more consistent basis. So I just kind of ask for anybody's comment around the table.
I love the chart, especially I'm looking at the first one. But what would make it easier for me is then to have the next page, rather than be another chart, kind of be a summary of what you just stated. Like you said that we had an Illinois fund that we could do a 1-year CD or a 2-year CD. So the 1 year is 2.4%, and what was the 2-year going
2.8.
at? Okay,
I mean, I think this is what we want to talk about in terms of what the future investment strategy is. I think we need to separate this to two different discussions. One is just talk about from pure reporting standpoint, is this informative that we want Eller to do for us going forward next year. The second piece, later of the discussion, I will talk about portfolio review. That's where we're going to talk about our strategy in terms of where we want to put our money for the next 6 months to a year, which we're going to talk about whether it's money market better or are we going to continue to invest in bonds.
I found this chart very useful.
Good.
I don't know your perspective, Jay. Do you think something like this going forward would be helpful?
It seems to me it would be, but the question is it useful to Ginger and Tatiana? And now they're the ones who need to be doing this day to day. I think it looks interesting to me, but I don't know what staff would have to say about the usefulness of this information.
Ginger.
Yeah, I think it is useful, but like some of the stuff is, basically she takes the information that we give her anyhow and incorporates it into here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like the timing of like incorporating this into our packet would be kind of hard, because I have to close out the month first and then send it to her, and then I don't know how long it takes you guys to do it. And what the turnaround would be. It wouldn't be like, we wouldn't be able to get it into the packet, cause like I'm sending the stuff out on Friday, which is the day that we have to send the packet out, so.
Yeah.
You'd always be a month behind or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be, really, a month by month, it's really to take a look at the year and to make sure that your liquidity is at an appropriate level and you don't have, too much sitting liquid that isn't earning you interest, but neither do you want to be short, so it's trying to forecast where you're gonna need cash and where you're not gonna need cash. It's not meant to be, in and out on, every month basis kind of thing.
That's true, because probably in Ginger, we're probably less concerned about your actual, when you're gonna put actually and close your book. It's more about, this is really a forecasting tool. Part of it is if we have a major capital expenditure, we just kind of want, right now, you can see based on our ending balance, our library does not have a liquidity issue at all.
No.
So the question is really to say, if we're gonna make major, at least make this visible. So if we have a major investment coming in, let's kind of say what cash is coming in, what's coming out. If we say it's dipped below our average, let's think about it. That's kind of all it is. So Ginger, I don't think it's really. Well, it'd be nice that when we close the book, send Eller the actual. But the more important is if we have a big capital expenditure, for example, we talk about strategic plan, things you want to invest in now, whether it's facilities and stuff. Let's just put it in, and we can always change the timing. This is just the forecasting tool for us anyway. And so I think it's useful from my perspective, and we can update it every month if we have a better refined capital spending plan. At a minimum, even though it's not for liquidity purposes, just to have a visibility on what is our fund balance month to month.
Right, and you asked if this is helpful. I mean, I
appreciate seeing
Mhm.
the big picture, on the first page, and then it's broken down by, different accounts,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Afterwards, I appreciate that.
And I like different accounts too, because we have so many in the consolidated report we have in the monthly package. Sometimes you kind of don't realize all the accounts because it's all bundled together. Sometimes kind of talk through, definitely there's a value to consolidate some of them, and I know there's a purpose of why sometimes some operating accounts, the reason for, I think just more of a refresh on memory, maybe I'm thinking Ginger can talk through individual accounts, what's the purpose of individual accounts are, I mean, maybe starting with the NB operating account, what would you use it for, and what is kind of minimum balance?
Oh, okay, so the MB operating account is basically our general checking account. And, we try to keep around 50,000 in there, but, and then we project what we feel that we're gonna spend, in the following month with payroll and the various bills. Right now, our balance is a little bit higher. Oh, no, actually, it was higher, but, cause we knew we had some big months coming up with, expenditures.
So just conclusion for this one is our operating account pretty much go in and out, to pay for our expenses, so therefore, we have I don't know whether 50,000 is a good balance, but I think it's probably reasonable to make sure we have, protecting the account. So I don't think there's any issue with, continuing with this account unless anybody else have any questions.
The now account is the account that we receive our taxes into. So this account gets some interest. So what we do is we receive it into here, and then each month we transfer money out of here into the operating account.
But we do have a lot of excess balance, so are we reinvesting the balance into some sort of money market account? That could be, a money market account, it's like 24-hour withdrawal with no penalty. We got plenty of those.
No, we're not.
So maybe that's something we need to kind of take a look at, talk with NB Financial on this account, see what they can do in terms of this repo, right? This every overnight investing in the balance, and you know that the tool very well. So that's at least would get interest more than what we have sitting there. Maybe that's something, follow-up action we should,
Well, this is kind of like a money market account, cause it does get a higher interest rate.
well, maybe you can talk to them and reconfirm what they are doing in terms of reinvesting the balance on a daily basis.
Okay.
It's just good to confirm.
And then, US Bank, this is one of our e-commerce accounts that, our fines are paid through. And we do get a little bit of interest on there, but not very much.
So this is kind of my question is, do we really need to consolidate that, into something? Because we look at it, and we have moved our businesses right now to NB Financial, that's operating account, and also when we receive our tax receipts. I don't know what's the value of having a separate bank for the US Bank.
Well,
I think we have to do that.
Yeah,
right?
we had to, I think it's one of the ones that, I'm not sure if MB works with Polaris and
The system
The
that does the,
You got volume check?
I forgot the acronym for,
ETS?
no. It's for, it's e-commerce acronym, oh gosh, PCI compliance?
right.
Yes.
That's it. So, I think that the US Bank works with our system and the PCI compliance portion. I'm not sure the amount that's in there is the amount we want, but, we had to use a separate bank for that. 'Cause
And at the
MB
time,
wouldn't-
we didn't have MB.
Right.
We had Bank of America, and they did not.
So this is really just an e-commerce account, we will be able to receive our electronic transfer
Yeah.
for the funds.
Mhm.
If that is the case, we'll kind of understand what's the minimum balance that's needed, because it doesn't make sense to put, 50,000 there if it's only just a,
Well, this is just what has accumulated since we've opened this account.
so
I
maybe,
mean-
You can transfer.
so maybe we can take a look at whether we have opportunity to transfer into money market, whether
Okay.
it's NB,
Yeah.
operating, or Lisle Savings Bank or whatever. So maybe that's a fall action, we can look into that.
And it sounds like we checked when we had a prior bank whether or not we needed this account separate from MB. Does MB, can we move this, or do we know we can't move it for consolidation?
I don't know, we did not even think about that at the time, because we had Bank of America, and we knew that we couldn't put the money into Bank of America, and we had a problem because we were getting our taxes into Illinois funds, but then all of a sudden Illinois funds could not receive our funds anymore, our taxes, so we had to look for another bank, and we really had a hard time looking for another bank.
Do you mind checking to see whether MB can take on all of those things now that sit with US Bank? Or, I mean, if you didn't have time to check before, would you mind checking now, I guess is my question.
Well, I'm not sure it was time, it was more who could take us for what purpose, but I think that's a good ask for now. I think, we weren't sure MB could
Right.
Do what we wanted them to do regarding the e-commerce, and everything happened at one time. So US Bank offered, again, back to Laurie's point, the amount that's in there, perhaps we can transfer some out,
Right.
reinvest. But we can look into that.
Yeah, or can we reach out to MB and see if they have the capability of doing what PCI?
Because it has to work with our
System?
Polaris and. Okay, and then we have Lisle Savings, which is just is this one of the CDs?
This money market?
This is one of our CDs. We actually have like 3 accounts at Lisle Savings. We have like a CD and 2 CDs and like just an operating, kind of like a little checking account there. But they're all around 200,000. And we just wanted to keep the money there because the board had always said that they wanted, to keep some money invested within the
Locally, yeah,
town.
I understand, I think that's good.
And actually, we have another CD that's due,
Mhm.
like coming up in July. In IMET, we just went to IMET to invest a little bit more, and keep some money liquid, so we took some money out of Illinois funds and moved it over to IMET. They're paying about 1.7.
Yep. The IMAT is definitely a very, very good fund for us right now, in terms of rate of return.
And Illinois fund is paying about 1.7 also, and that's where we still get our PPRT at. So we wanted to keep some money in there also.
I'm sorry, PPRT?
Our personal property.
Replacement tax
I still don't understand that.
goes back a long way.
Yeah,
Because it's not a lot of money, is it?
no.
Okay. Can anybody just tell me in one sentence what it is?
It's a tax that corporations used to have, and then they eliminated it, but we still receive money from it. Like whoever, it's kind of, I don't know.
Right, so when the state, I think it is, correct me if I'm wrong, when the state got rid of the tax, the municipalities and government bodies complained. So to make up for it, the state sends some of the money that we would have gotten from the tax back to us through the
Yeah, it's
personal
probably
property
about
replacement tax.
17,000 a year, maybe.
I'm trying to find the definition, I don't think it's in this book.
Okay,
So state sends money back to LLD.
yes.
Okay.
And then the investment account is our Ellers account.
Yep. Okay, I think we kind of talk about a couple of follow-up action regarding the kind of balance for MB financial now account investment, and also checking the US Bank in terms of whether we should transfer balance from US Bank or reaching out to MB at the same time and ask for whether they can have capability of working with Polaris, right, so those are follow-up actions, and I think we all agree that it's useful, including the staff, to continue to have this forecast for the coming year.
Definitely.
Okay. So if we have no more questions, maybe Dawn, you can kind of talk through the portfolio review and give your assessment.
Certainly. The first thing I want to bring up is just your investment policy. We generally recommend that you review it about at least every 3 years, and it's been about 3 years. I think the last one I have on file is from March of 2015, so you may want to think about doing that, just reviewing it. In looking at it, Ken and I didn't have any particular, recommendations for any changes, but it's still a good idea to take a look at it and review it. And then once you have reviewed it, if you could make sure we have the updated copy to make sure we're in compliance. All right. So what I want to do then is just kind of walk through some of your objectives, safety, liquidity, and return in that order. In terms of safety, the portfolio consisted of a little bit over half FDIC insured certificates of deposit, so FDIC all under the $250,000 limit. Then there was about 40% of the securities were in U.S. agency securities, Fannie Mae's, Ginnie Mae's, that kind of thing, Federal Farm Credit Banks. And then there was a little bit of municipal bonds, about 8% in municipal bonds, and then the little bit of cash that accumulates from securities paying interest, etc. Okay, so in terms of safety, that's just about as safe as you can get. Liquidity. We've actually shortened up your average weighted, or your average weighted maturity. Used to, a year ago, it was about 2.4 years, and right now it's just slightly under 2 years. And the main reason for that is interest rates are rising, and so in the rising interest rate environment, we kind of shorten things up a little bit. Also, the yield curve has flattened, meaning you don't get a whole lot of extra return for investing longer term, So we've generally been keeping it, less than 3 years kind of thing. So you're right in line with where we would generally recommend, given today's interest rate environment and the economy. Okay. And in terms of return, there's really a couple of returns. We have to report on the total return, which includes the market fluctuations. So in terms of the annual rate of return, which includes that fluctuation, it was only 0.217, and that's net of fees, so after our fees. And the reason that's so low is because interest rates have gone up. They've literally almost doubled. They've gone up over 1% in the last year. And so because your portfolio consists of fixed income investments, when interest rates rise, the value falls. That having been said, they're all unrealized losses. There are some unrealized losses, but because we have a buy and hold strategy, those won't become realized investments unless you actually have to sell them in advance of a maturity, which of course we don't plan to do. And one of the reasons we go out in a laddered investment strategy is because then about every month or two you have something come and due, so ideally then you won't have to liquidate that. And then obviously the cash flow forecast. We take a look at your cash flow forecast to make sure that, when you're going to have low periods, we have some maturities to take care of that. Okay. The other return that is probably more appropriate for you is called the book yield, or the average weighted yield to maturity, which is really then just your interest income yield, and it takes out the market price fluctuations. So yours is about 1.8% right now. And so that's, in a year ago, it was 1.36. So it's gone up 50 basis points in the last year. And then as interest rates continue to rise and we reinvest at those higher rates, obviously that continues to creep up. At some point, when interest rates kind of stabilize and hopefully don't, I don't know, what do they call them, the Trump recession, so hopefully that doesn't pan out. But if interest rates ever do, start to dip down, then the laddered maturity actually slows down. You'll overperform the market because you'll have these rates locked in for a period of a number of years, so that as they fall, you're still getting the higher rate of return that we had invested you at. Okay. Then the second page really is market comment. I'm not gonna read through that, but, you know, basically, the Federal Reserve raised rates for the second time this year, and they're predicting another 2 increases this year, and then slowing down next year and predicting about 2 increases next year if that comes to pass. The last page,
I'm
just,
sorry, which one are you? Oh, you're on the back. Got it, okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't do mine back to back evidently.
Okay.
So then the last page then has just a picture of the Treasury yield curve comparing last year to this year, so that you can, the red is this year, so you can see that it really is about a percentage point higher than it had been a year ago. And you can see it's a little bit flatter.
So the conclusion, which I think you stated before, is that there's less and less reason to invest in longer-term CDs.
Right.
And that's why laddering makes sense.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so, yeah, we really have done very little investing out past like 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was kind of looking at the benchmark, you know, versus what we're doing. Clearly, we're being under, the portfolio has been performing under the market just because of the flat yield curve.
And that's, right, and
Right,
I'm
yeah,
sorry,
go
but
ahead.
and the benchmark that we have
Mhm.
put in there, you know, is to kind of compare to like IMET or whatever, the Illinois funds, which is, you know, a money market account.
Yes, yeah.
And so their yields can react much more quickly to the market.
Mhm.
And so in a rising rate, yes, they're gonna underperform because they can, you know, keep going up.
So this,
Um,
yeah, that's a kind of discussion, yeah, go ahead.
And in terms of, it's not really underperforming at this point, I mean, on an annual basis, because we're at, if you look at the interest rate and take out the market fluctuations, you're earning about 1.8% and they're at like 1.7, so, and that is net of fees. So it's a little bit over, but yeah, particularly in a rising rate environment, that's why we shorten things up.
So that's kind of the question to say, you know, what's gonna be our, you know, short-term kind of investment, because we do have some, bonds and receipts are due in the next few months, and what we're gonna invest in. And looks like with a flattened yield curve, it probably makes sense to put in short-term, like money market for a while until our interest kind of rates, environment stabilize.
I would disagree with that actually, unless you need the money, because you can still, even 6-month rates are, 6-month rates are higher than your money market. And then you can, you know, be reinvesting. 2-year CD rates are at 2.8%, so you can get a 1% extra. Even 6-month CDs are at 2.25, so 50 basis points higher than the money market.
But then we just invest in a shorter duration.
Yes, I would say shorter. I would
That's
say,
probably what I was
I don't think
trying
you need to
say
go
is-
money market, you know,
Right.
liquid.
Yeah.
But yes, shorter,
Okay,
which is
yeah.
what we've been doing, which is
Okay.
why it's gone from 2.4 years to just 2.8.
Yeah, so that will further reduce our average duration for, you know, for the whole portfolio.
Right.
So,
The-
I'm sorry, 6 months versus 1 year, what are the
Oh, sure.
returns?
6-month was 2.25, and 1 year is at 2.4. 2 year is at 2.80.
And on this page, what are you using and where is the benchmark reflected?
Sure. Yeah, these, let me just preface, these charts, we're going to a new portfolio accounting system that has a lot more analytics for us, and so it's a lot. Let's see, what is the benchmark? I think it is talked about at the very end. Let's see. On the very last page with all these charts, it actually talks about what the benchmark is. Under, kind of halfway down, it'll say index. In the B of A 3-month US Treasury bill.
Okay,
And
where are
the-
you, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, right here.
Got it.
So that, it just talks about kind of what they're comparing.
So do you
Two.
kind of average those two, or
Um,
because of the difference in time? Investment, the investment time?
right. I think this is actually, this is all kind of new because we're in the midst of this and we're not quite through the conversion. The above one, the 3-month, I think was historically. And then in January, when we started tracking with this new system, we decided, I think that it was more appropriate to move you to the 3 to 5 year, because you were at closer to a 3-year return, but there's not much history there, because we just started looking at that.
And on the page, it says what the index is, but I can't see what the index returned anywhere on these charts.
Yeah.
To know what to compare to the index, because you list
Let's
what the
see,
index is,
maybe.
but not,
That's an excellent point. Like I said, these are brand new. I don't even know where it talks about that.
Yeah, because, I just look back on your monthly investment summary report.
Mm-hmm.
The benchmark you guys, again, this is, you just use the treasury bill, right, 3-month
Yeah.
treasury bill. But this is not the most recent, this is, April investment benchmarking it out.
So that's the report you're eliminating.
We're replacing it, yes.
Yes.
You're replacing
Yes,
this
exactly.
report with
We're moving to a new
what
portfolio
you-
accounting package,
Okay.
yes. And that'll probably be in a month or two.
Yeah, so maybe you can kind of follow up with us in terms of providing us with, what is the kind of the benchmark
Okay.
rate compared to our portfolio. But I think this is helpful, this is,
I think we've made some great strides moving to more analytics.
Mhm.
So, thank you, everybody.
and another thing, this is something we're probably going to have another, at our next finance committee meeting, and Don has pointed out, we need to review our, financial investment policy overall, because that's been 3 years, and part of it, I think in the past, I think in our current policy does say that we could invest in, higher grade, high quality corporate bond, which we have never done before. We have always invested in municipal bonds, so this question, because typically corporate will have a higher yield. So that's something we can talk about it and see that's something we wanna consider.
As long as we use the word high quality.
and what historically, what is the default rate even of high quality versus the type of muni bonds we have now? Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you.
Okay.
Maybe something that when we come back, you can kind of give us some
Sure.
recommendation.
And the other thing that we can do, that you may be able to do too, is commercial paper, which is generally for shorter term, high quality, same thing you can do at, A1, P1.
That's really short term. right?
Yes. Yeah, less than a year.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, so if not, thank you very much, Don.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
your
It was nice.
recommendation and.
Thank you for your
report out.
business, we appreciate it, we enjoy the relationship.
Okay, so let's move to, agenda item 5, B&A overview. So this line item, actually, I was trying to, talk to Tatiana earlier to clarify, this is now we're actually gonna review the B&A itself, because the staff is still preparing it. This is really just kind of refresh the whole process and how that's different than the budget, and what's the relationship and what's the overall timeline, so that we all have, can have the same understanding. So Tatiana, do you mind just,
Sure,
Give us a
sure.
quick overview.
Well, I sent out the chapter 5 that's in the, our financial manual that everybody has. This is a nice little recap of what the B&A is and does.
When you say you sent it out,
Email, PDF,
when did it come out?
last week.
Okay.
You didn't receive it?
No, but
It's in your
I
box
was-
too. They were nested.
The nesting emails,
Yeah, I mean, that's
sometimes
just part of it.
things hide when they get nested in emails, yes.
Yeah. But you have a copy of it and you have this manual too.
okay.
So, chapter 5 is 3 pages,
Got it.
In the financial manual. And basically, it just recaps what the BNA is. So the BNA, we all know is it's budget, which we've already approved, that's the working budget, and then it's the appropriation, and that's our legal limit of spending. So, Illinois taxing districts must adopt an ordinance, in order to have the authority to spend, the funding, that we receive. So, the appropriation portion is our legal authorization and limit to incur debt and to pay those obligations and debts. So we prepare a reasonable working budget. We start preparation in winter, December with staff. This year, we had 2 committee of the whole meetings regarding the budget in April. After that, we approved the budget in May. And then we prepare a resolution to prepare the BNA in July, and we have a public hearing notice in July, because we have to legally have 30 days, we have to publish 30 days in advance of the adoption of the BNA. So according to our ordinance calendar, we adopt the BNA we approve the tentative BNA in August, and then we have a public hearing for it in September, and we adopt it in September. And then we adopt the levy in November. So we just approved of the ordinance for our resolution for all of our ordinances, and it's in there. I brought a copy of it, but we just did that last month. And that lists, thank you, that lists like our deadlines. We don't have to follow the dates, but we do have to follow the deadlines.
So typically, we approve the tentative BNA in August,
Yes.
and then we approve the finalized BNA
September.
in September. Got it.
Yes.
So any questions about this? I think the reason I think I put it on the agenda is, when we had committee of the whole, when we talked through it, there was kind of discussion of what, that versus the working budget, right? So assuming we all on the same basis, okay.
Right,
Because
and
it's, we don't, that's our spending limit versus how we're gonna spend the money.
correct, and so we're gonna prepare a tentative BNA, and we'll have a conversation about that. And I just wanna make the point of last year, these approvals for the tentative BNA and then the adoption of the BNA, they happen within a regular board meeting. So that's an action item under new business. We generally, item A, that's where we discuss it, and it'll be in the packet. So we'll have 2 attempts to discuss it.
I do think as a trustee, I would prefer that the budget and the BNA be closer, because I understand that the BNA gives us, or gives staff the ability to go over what the working budget is. But I would like to, without the board voting, but I would really like to know if we're going over any single working budget item, and I would like it brought to the board, and I'd like us to vote on it. And I realize the way we do it, and I know why we do it, I'm in favor of making that change.
The monthly updates that we get in terms of spending, that's for the working budget, correct? Not the BNA? The numbers that we get in our monthly packet?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so that way we can,
Like
Keep
compare, like we will have the year to date and
Mhm.
for forecast versus a BNA, we can do, is that something?
no,
we
I
can
think
do?
that, I like it the way it is now with the working budget.
Okay.
That's a-
That's our estimated cost. The BNA just allows for us, should we spend up to that budgeted amount, maybe it goes over a percentage point. It allows for that cushion to legally be able to go beyond.
Totally understand, thank you. I still believe that the BNA should be as close to or equal to the budget, because as a trustee, I wanna be notified that I have to approve going over the working budget. And I realize having the BNA cushion says we don't have to do that, but as a board member, I wanna know before the money's spent.
Yeah, I understand that. I think a lot of libraries and a lot of attorneys put it in that order, because when we start working on the working budget in December, we're gathering estimates from different vendors, we're making projections in December. And so throughout that process, and then we prepare a working budget for the board to approve, and that gets us through July through September, because we want reasonable estimates of spending. In the meantime, staff are still receiving like more concrete quotes. Maybe we're going to add something, maybe we're not gonna subtract something. By the time we get to that B&A portion, it may be a little higher than that working budget. Maybe Beth found something out, our HVAC, or we have to power rod out. So the B&A will extend beyond that working budget line item and allow for that spending, possibly, that might happen. We didn't do the project in September or October, but maybe it's happening in December, so we have to allow for that.
Okay, and I think that's a great idea. What I would like to discuss then, not here, but when we discuss it as a board, is I would like to know the rationale.
Sure.
Item by item, cause last year it was like $500,000. The B&A was about $500,000 more than the budget. And when we went through them at that time, we didn't go over why is this amount greater than the working budget. So if you could explain that to us, and again, not here, and you know,
Yeah.
that would be great.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have a more broader discussion of the B&A when we get here.
Got it,
Sure.
no problem,
And
thank you.
if there's some obvious kind of, for example, based on this almost the end of the year, right? Past year, what item or areas we have been kind of consistently underestimated, overestimated? Maybe highlight a couple examples. This is
Sure.
kind of the reason why we need to have a certain limit. I have an upper limit. And second piece is, part of some stuff that you mentioned is it could be kind of covered as part of contingency, because we do have an line item called contingency. That means, for things that go kind of overestimate. So how are we spending that contingency as well? in
That's when we
addition
go
to the
beyond,
limits?
if we hit that
That's
B&A.
where you tap into the
Yes.
contingency, yeah.
Yes,
So if you go beyond the B&A, that's when you spend the contingency?
generally.
Okay, so the B&A, and this is just surprising to me, so let's make sure I understand it. So if the B&A was $500,000 more than the budget last year, you could spend $500,000 more than the budget before you go into the contingency, is that what I'm hearing?
It's a line item.
It's a
By
line
line,
Yeah, it's
item.
about on,
Yeah.
So if you go over
Okay.
one line item, then you pull that from the contingency, not the B&A as a whole.
Yeah, no, it's
Got
not
it.
like a full amount.
So,
Yeah.
do we have any feeling, are we going over the working budget at all? Because we have almost the end of this year numbers?
I think the only time we did was for the training.
Postage.
Trustee.
Trustees.
And postage.
Oh, and postage, we
The
did a little
meter.
over the postage.
Was it a lot or a little?
I
No.
don't think so.
It's only like $1,000.
Okay,
Right.
great, thanks, I didn't realize that.
Any other questions? Well, if not, we can move to item 6 on the agenda, financial report formatting. So this is really a discussion. Liz, a few times you have kind of asked how we can make our reporting a little bit more useful and user-friendly. And so I just kind of general discussion, what improvements, people around the table would like to see. Or what's, good that we need to continue to do too, so. What I meant is really the monthly packet that we get. So one of the improvement I know Ginger and Tatiana made is, based on your recommendation, adding one column in terms of splitting the percentage, strip out the special reserve, how we distribute our cash as part of our treasury report. So I don't know any other
Thank you for
questions
doing that.
and you guys would like to.
That saves me pulling out my old-fashioned
To talk
calculator.
about, because I know you have asked quite a lot of questions around in the past, how we do each column, so we always have our current month spending actual, and then what's year to date, this year and year to date previous year, and against our budget, right? So I think that's still a good practice. I don't know if anybody else have any recommendation or for improvements. Remember, this is what I'm talking about, this whole line item details here.
The only thing I take my calculator out is to see what percentage of the year we're through, to compare to year to date. But that's not an issue.
Yeah.
So I was What is 7/12 in terms of percentage? Mm.
Right, but one of the things that I was always taught is if 6 people are doing something and one person could do it for them, and you know, Excel, it's like writing one program, then from an efficiency standpoint, why wouldn't you do it a little more efficiently? So I'm doing the same thing. And if half of the trustees are doing it, doesn't it make sense just to add it to the report?
You wanna put a line, it's what percentage of the year we're through?
Yeah.
That,
Because we're all calculating.
yes.
Yeah,
Making it easier, that's.
What do you, I mean, this one, we've already got a percentage of budget
Spent.
2 year to date, yeah, is that what
It's
you're?
spent, right. But the question that I always try to figure out is, what percentage of the budget year are we
Left?
through? Yeah, or no,
Oh.
we're through.
Okay.
So we spent 67% of this line item.
Yeah.
What percent of the budget year have we gone through already? Is it
Okay.
45 or is it 82, right? So we can, so that makes it easy, sort of.
Do you understand, Ginger, what they're asking?
But do you want it on the actual report, going down the lines?
Or do, yeah, that's what I'm thinking, that is, do we need all of that extra ink in a
Yeah.
line, or just,
Can we just have a total, like a subtotal versus every line item, like, or the whole?
Or can we put it someplace in the report?
yeah,
that
just put it
this is
someplace
like-
in the report that, you know, we're in May, which is 75% of the fiscal year.
Right.
Okay, okay.
That work?
Yeah, I have
So
to,
what is it?
go ahead.
No, I was thinking it was a part of the summary line item, or what do you,
No, there's just someplace like in the first
I
page
mean, the
or
first page is part of the whole
a little
treasury
statement.
report, or
Yeah.
a statement, okay,
It might just be
Summary.
up in the title or something,
Yeah,
something
that's
like that. Okay.
Okay, yeah, that would work as part of title, yeah.
Mhm.
Just
Sorry.
have it there. Yeah.
I will continue to calculate line by line, because although it tells me what percentage we are, I still wanna know, kind of like, I don't know how to explain this. I still wanna do it line by line. I mean, that's what I will continue to do.
Okay.
I guess then if you know that we're 75% of the way through the fiscal year, and each line item breaks it down as to what percentage of the fiscal year budget's already been spent,
What else are you looking for?
what are you looking for, yes, I guess.
I guess I'm making okay, so I know, and maybe, maybe the way the column is worded, is making me think it's something else. Okay, so, we know what we've spent year to date, and then we know what percentage of the budget relative to year to date, right?
It's, that percentage is that line item spent for
Right.
that, for the year.
Okay,
So if it
and
says
what's
65%, we're 65% spent of that line item for the year.
for the year? Okay, what I'm also gonna calculate is, okay, we've spent 65% for the year. What I also calculate is, why don't we hold off on this, cause I don't have it with me, but there's another, I don't wanna waste anybody's time. So let me think about it.
Okay.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding, never mind, let's think about
Okay.
it.
That's fine.
But having that on the title,
Yeah,
because
that's
you can easily see where the outliers are,
Sure.
pretty, you know, identified pretty easily.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think that'll be a good add. Another thing is, I don't know how hard it is, Ginger, that, whether, besides this hard copy for PDF, is something you can also kind of export into some sort of a usable database format, like Excel or something, because sometimes it's kind of easy for me to kind of look through it and just do a, quick calculation of something if I do wanted to do that. Because these are really hard because it's a PDF format. Okay, is software can export into Excel?
We can, put it into Excel, we do it for one trustee, but it's not
not formatted
No.
nicely.
Yeah, that's okay, as long as it's something in a usable, workable format than PDF. I think, do you mind, like, when you kind of send it to just attach not only PDF and attach Excel format for me as well? And actually, I also would like, I know this is only finance committee, but also like the program service statistic, that'll be good too. I just kind of like to.
Oh, I don't do that.
And the circulation,
Mhm.
I would like them.
The-
And circulation, yeah.
The statistics, can you put that?
Mhm.
Mhm.
That would be great. Okay, any other discussions around formatting? Okay, well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Meeting adjourned, is that right?
You take a vote?
Oh, take a vote, yeah, let's
Okay.
take a, aye.